Let me leave you with this. What if the reason you're hearing this today is because heaven is trying to prepare your heart for what's coming? What if this message isn't just a curiosity, but a confirmation? You've been asking for a sign. You've been wondering if the person who's been acting different around you might feel something deeper, and here's the truth: they do. They just don't know how to say it yet. But love, real love, doesn't always begin with clarity. Sometimes it begins with courage, and while they build up the strength to speak, you've been given this gift, awareness. Now you know. Now you see. Now you understand the weight of what's coming your way. Don't rush it. Don't dismiss it. Don't let it pass without honoring it, because someone is praying for the words. And you're the answer to a prayer they've been scared to say out loud. This is your sign. This is their moment. Get ready. Love is knocking. We live in a world where boldness is praised and confidence is the currency of connection. We've been taught that if someone doesn't rush in, if they don't pursue loudly, they're not interested. But I want to challenge that belief today, because what if the hesitation you're seeing isn't a sign of disinterest, but a signal of something far more sacred? See, fear doesn't always mean absence. It can also mean depth. Some people fear what they value. They pause not because they're unsure, but because they know exactly how much you matter. When love is real, when it's raw, soul, deep, potentially life-changing, it doesn't always come in loud declarations. Sometimes it arrives wrapped in fear, not the kind of fear that pushes away, but the kind that reveres what's in front of it. That fear you see in their eyes, that pause before they speak, that quiet, nervous energy when they're around you. It's not weakness, it's reverence. They're scared because their heart is trying to hold something it's never held before, something that could shape the rest of their life. Let me put it this way: if someone is nervous around you, it might not be because they're hiding something. It might be because they're holding something too big to carry casually. You're not just a crush to them. You're not just a nice conversation. You're a soul encounter. You've stirred something in them that doesn't just want to flirt. It wants to build. But here's what we miss. Because we're so used to noise, we overlook the whispers. We expect declarations and ignore the devotion that hides behind hesitation. But listen, nervous love is still love, and sometimes it's the purest kind. Because it's not trying to impress you. It's trying not to mess things up. Some people have been hurt before. Some people are carrying old heartbreaks, and you showing up in their life wasn't just exciting. It was terrifying. Why? Because you made them believe again, and believing again, loving again, hoping again is scary when you've lived through the kind of pain that makes you want to shut every door to your heart. So they hesitate, not because they don't care, but because you matter too much to be reckless with, and maybe, just maybe, you've mistaken their nervousness for a red flag. You've asked yourself, if they really liked me, wouldn't they just say something? But friend, when something feels holy, you don't just speak. You prepare your heart first. When Moses stood at the burning bush, he didn't shout with excitement. He trembled. When Isaiah encountered God, he didn't leap. He fell to his knees. Why? Because when something sacred stands in front of you, you pause, and you're sacred ground in someone's life right now. That's why they're afraid to make the wrong move. That's why they're overthinking every word, rehearsing every moment, wondering if you feel the same. Because love, real love, counts the cost before it speaks. So if someone is nervous around you, don't immediately interpret it as a lack of love. Sometimes fear is the first sign that something sacred is unfolding. And if you feel it too, if your spirit knows something's shifting, maybe your own fear isn't doubt, maybe it's confirmation. Fear doesn't always mean stop. Sometimes it means slow down, because what's ahead of you is holy. You may be dealing with someone who looks calm on the surface but is battling a storm of emotions underneath, and they're trying to find the courage to say, "You're not just someone I like, you're someone I could see forever with. Let that land." They're not nervous because you're just another option. They're nervous because you might be the one. So before you write someone off because they're quiet or unsure or slow to speak, take a moment. Watch the way they treat your presence. Watch how they listen when you talk. Watch how their eyes light up when you laugh. That's not disinterest, that's awe. They're not afraid because they don't feel enough. They're afraid because they've never felt this much, and you're the reason someone's praying for courage tonight. You ever walk into a room and feel like someone's eyes are already on you? Before you say a word, before you sit down, before you even look their way, something shifts in the atmosphere. It's like your presence doesn't just enter a room, it speaks. That's not a coincidence. That's not imagination, that's energy. Your energy is preaching a sermon louder than your mouth ever could. It's carrying confidence, warmth, mystery, and maybe even a little vulnerability. And someone, yes, someone, is picking up on it. They see something in you, something rare, something they didn't expect, and it stopped them in their tracks. Now they're wondering, could this be something real? But they're holding back, not because they don't want to move forward, but because they're waiting for permission. And I don't mean permission in a controlling or timid way. I mean emotional permission, a signal, a sign that says it's safe here. You can show me who you are. Because whether you realize it or not, your energy tells a story. And right now, someone is trying to read between the lines. They've seen the way you carry yourself. Grace with strength, beauty with resilience, peace with power. You don't need to announce that you're different. Your energy did that for you. The moment you walked in, their spirit caught something, not just attraction, not just chemistry, but alignment, divine alignment. But here's the thing, they don't want to misread you. They don't want to project something onto you that isn't there, so they wait, they hesitate. Not because they aren't drawn to you, but because your energy also carries boundaries, and that's a good thing. But boundaries without invitation can feel like walls, so they're watching for something else, a green light, a glimpse, a subtle shift, maybe in your eyes, maybe in your smile, maybe in the way you lean in just slightly when you talk to them. They're searching for anything that says, you're welcome here, not in your space, in your heart. You might think you haven't done anything to encourage them, but that's the thing, you've shown up as yourself. Unapologetic, honest, maybe even a little guarded, but still kind. That energy, that's powerful, that's rare, that's magnetic. It doesn't just pull people in, it changes them, and now they're wondering if it's safe to step forward. They're wondering if the way you laugh when you're comfortable means you'd laugh like that with them. They're wondering if the softness in your eyes is a door they're allowed to knock on, or one that's permanently closed. So let's talk about your signal, because someone's waiting for it. It doesn't have to be a grand gesture. It doesn't have to be a deep conversation. Sometimes the smallest expressions carry the loudest clarity. A second longer of eye contact, a slightly more personal question, a thank you that holds weight, a smile that reaches your soul. These are the signs people look for when they're scared to speak, but desperate to connect. You don't have to chase, you don't have to confess, but you might need to invite. Sometimes we pray for someone to find the courage to love us, but we never show them where to land. We pray for connection, but keep our hearts locked behind the energy of I don't need anyone. And while strength is beautiful, strength with softness is irresistible. You can be whole and still open. You can be confident and still inviting. You can be selective without being closed off. So let your energy extend an invitation. Not to anyone, but to the right one, because right now someone's watching and wondering, do I have a chance? Is this just a dream, or could it be destiny? Am I seeing something real or imagining everything I want? They're not confused. They're cautious, they're not slow, they're careful, and they're looking for clarity, not from your words, but from your presence, because your energy has already spoken. Now they're waiting for permission. We talk a lot about perfect timing, about the stars aligning, about when the right moment comes, but what if I told you the moment has already come? What if the person who's been quiet around you, careful with their words, hesitant with their emotions, isn't waiting on the calendar, they're waiting on courage, because timing isn't always about days or dates. It's about readiness, it's about worthiness, it's about whether someone believes they are enough to step into the kind of love you carry. See, someone might be deeply in love with you and still not approach you. Not because they're unsure of you, but because they're unsure of themselves. They see you, they admire you, they feel something sacred when they're near you, but deep down they question, am I the kind of person someone like that would choose? That's the quiet pain a lot of people carry. They don't delay love because they don't want it. They delay love because they're afraid of ruining something they already treasure. It's not the timing they doubt, it's their value. We assume everyone will act on their feelings when they're strong enough. But the truth is, feelings aren't always the issue. Fear is. They fear being inadequate. They fear stepping in too soon and being seen too clearly. They fear you'll look beneath the surface and find out they're still healing, still building, still becoming. So they stay quiet, not because they're not serious, but because you are. You're not a distraction, you're a direction, you're not a moment, you're a mission. You don't walk into someone's life and leave them the same. And that kind of impact, it requires a different kind of courage. And maybe you've been asking, if they like me, why haven't they made a move? But what if that question is based on a false assumption? That like is always louder than limitation. What if their hesitation isn't rejection, it's reverence? Some people delay love not because they doubt it, but because they don't want to mishandle it. That's how they see you, as something worth protecting even from their own uncertainty. They've been through things, you have too, but maybe you're further along in your growth. Maybe you've reached a place of emotional clarity that they're still trying to find. Maybe you've already discovered your purpose while they're still fighting through the fog of who they are. And that makes them cautious, not selfish, not unavailable, just honest. Honest enough to know that what they feel is real. And real love requires readiness. They're not dragging their feet. They're checking their foundation. Because they know if they step to you, it can't be halfway. They know if they come close, they can't bring half-hearted energy into a full-hearted connection. And isn't that what you've been praying for? Not someone who's reckless with your love, not someone who fakes confidence to win your attention, but someone who values you enough to pause, to reflect, to prepare. You see, when people say divine timing, we think about fate. We think about serendipity, but sometimes divine timing isn't about the universe flipping a switch. It's about someone finding the courage to believe they deserve the kind of love they've only ever dreamed about. And right now, someone is praying for that courage. They're watching your life from a distance, whispering to themselves, if I ever get the chance, I'll do it right. So don't assume silence means absence. Sometimes it means awe. Don't interpret waiting as weakness. Sometimes it's wisdom, and don't mistake their hesitation for lack of love. It might be proof that they see you as something too powerful to approach with anything less than their whole heart. Maybe they're not waiting on a better moment. Maybe they're waiting to become a better version of themselves, not for the world, not for appearances, but for you, because what you carry, your heart, your strength, your peace isn't common. And they know that. That's why they're moving slowly. That's why they're measuring every step. That's why they're not rushing to the table, because they want to bring something worthy of sitting with you at it. So the next time you wonder, why hasn't it happened yet? Remember this, it's not the clock they're watching, it's their character. It's not the month that needs to change, it's their mindset. It's not about time. It's about transformation, and if love is going to last, it must be built on the courage to grow, before the courage to pursue. We've been trained to expect love like a movie, big moments, bold declarations. Public displays that scream, this is it. But what if I told you the loudest love doesn't always make a sound? What if I told you that real love, the kind that touches eternity, whispers? Because sometimes love doesn't come with roses and a rooftop confession. Sometimes it walks in quietly, sits in the corner of the room, and watches you with reverence. It doesn't rush, it doesn't perform, it waits, and it watches, with hope in its heart and fire in its silence. You see, the shy glance, that brief moment where someone looks at you and quickly looks away, that's not nothing, that's everything. That's the soul saying, I see something here that I'm not ready to lose, but too afraid to reach for. We mistake noise for depth. We think fireworks mean connection, but real love, it's patient, it's precise, it's present. The deepest connections don't shout, they sense. They feel you from across the room. They remember the details of your laugh. They carry your name in their spirit like a melody they can't stop humming. And maybe, just maybe, someone is loving you like that right now. They don't know how to say it. They're not ready to move. But when they see you, something in them pauses. Their spirit leans in, not because of anything you've done, but because of everything you are. You didn't need to impress them. Your presence was enough. You didn't need to perform. Your soul spoke first. And now they're sitting with a love they don't yet know how to carry. It's not weakness, it's wonder. Some people are stunned by beauty, not just physical, but the beauty of spirit, the way you walk in truth, the way you carry kindness without compromise. That kind of beauty doesn't attract attention, it arrests it, and so they glance, they steal a moment, not because they're unsure, but because they're undone. They don't want to love you halfway. They don't want to risk turning something divine into something casual, so they sit in silence, praying for a moment when courage outweighs fear, and this is where so many of us miss it. We're so busy looking for grand gestures that we ignore the grace of the glance. We want someone to shout, I choose you, but sometimes they already have, in a whisper only your spirit can hear. Sometimes love doesn't begin with a proposal. It begins with a glance, a respectful, careful, trembling glance that says, I don't want to disturb this moment. I don't want to rush this story, but I see you, and I want to be worthy of you. That's not immaturity. That's maturity in its purest form, because anyone can act on impulse. But only someone serious will pause long enough to be intentional. And you don't need shallow intensity. You need sacred intentionality. You need the kind of love that doesn't need the spotlight. It just wants you, and here's what's wild. Love has a language that goes beyond words. The body speaks, the soul speaks, the energy speaks. And when two spirits recognize each other, even a glance becomes a love letter. That's why some people stare at you like they've known you in another lifetime, because on some level, their soul has waited for this kind of energy, this kind of presence, this kind of peace. So don't ignore the glance, don't dismiss the small moments, because sometimes love is hiding in the eye contact that lingers just 1 second longer than usual. Love is hiding in the way someone smiles at your joy, even when they don't understand your story. Love is hiding in the way their hands tremble when you get close, because your presence doesn't just excite them, it humbles them. That's not small, that's not weak, that's real, because real love doesn't need to prove itself. It just shows up soft, quiet, consistent, and maybe today is the day you stop waiting for the fireworks and start noticing the flame, because the spark is there, it always was. You just needed to slow down enough to feel it. What if I told you that you are someone's answered prayer, not just someone's fantasy, not just someone's passing thought, but someone's intercession, someone's late night whisper to God, someone's Lord, if this kind of love is real, let me see it in my lifetime. And what if this moment right here, right now, is part of divine alignment? What if you're not just listening to this message for clarity, but because you are the clarity? What if the person you've been wondering about, questioning, sensing, feeling, has been praying for a sign? And you are that sign. Sometimes when people ask heaven for direction, heaven sends them you, not with a neon light, not with a booming voice, but with a presence, a peace, a feeling that says, this isn't an accident, this is alignment. And that's exactly what's happening here. You didn't stumble into this moment by mistake, the same way they didn't stumble into your life without purpose. You've been asking questions, haven't you? Is this real? Is this connection more than I think it is? Am I imagining it, or is something deeper happening here? But behind your questions, they've been asking too, God, send me someone who sees me, who gets me, who won't leave when it gets heavy, who speaks peace without trying, who feels like home even when we're still strangers. And when they met you, something shifted. They didn't have the words for it, they still might not, but something inside them said, this feels like the answer, and yet they've hesitated, not because they're playing games, not because they're confused, but because when something matters this much, you don't just walk toward it, you pray over it. That's what you are to them, worth praying over, not a risk, a revelation, not just a crush, a confirmation. And while they've been waiting on courage, you've been hearing this message. You've been given a front row seat to something divine, not just to understand it, but to recognize your part in it, because it takes two people to steward something sacred. And sometimes God gives one of them the nudge before the other has found their voice. So maybe this is your nudge to stop doubting your intuition, to stop second guessing your energy, to stop brushing off the moments that feel too holy to be coincidence. You didn't dream this up. You didn't fabricate this feeling. This isn't just emotion. It's alignment. Because when you are the answer to someone's prayer, heaven makes sure you hear about it first. Not through a phone call. Not through a confession, but through a still small voice in your spirit that says, pay attention, this is it. This isn't just about romance, this is about assignment, this is about divine pairing. This is about two people whose healing journeys were preparing them to meet. Not at their peak, but at their realest. You're not perfect, neither are they, but love doesn't require perfection, it requires presence. And right now, you are present for a reason, because someone out there is praying for confirmation. And what if this message isn't just yours to receive, but to respond to, not by chasing, not by forcing, but by inviting, by showing up with the kind of openness that says, if this is God's doing, I'm ready. What you're feeling isn't random, it's not just chemistry, it's calling. And calling doesn't always come with a plan, it comes with a pulse. And something inside you is beating faster right now because your spirit knows this is true. You've been seen, you've been chosen, you've been sent into their life, into this moment, into this divine intersection. Not just to wonder if love is real, but to walk in it when it shows up. So what if this is the moment they've been praying for, and what if you're hearing it first? Because you were meant to help carry the answer. Let's take a breath, let everything you've just heard settle in. Because this wasn't just a message, it was a mirror, and maybe, just maybe, you're starting to realize that nervous energy you felt around them, that wasn't confusion, it was connection, those shy glances, those soft silences, those almost conversations that never quite made it out of their mouth, that wasn't hesitation, it was honor. They weren't avoiding you, they were revering you, because love this deep doesn't rush in shouting. It enters trembling, it enters carefully, it enters with awe, and someone, right now, is loving you more than they know how to say. They're watching your life like a sunrise they don't want to disturb. They're praying for the right time. They're asking heaven if someone like you could ever say yes to someone like them. But here's the plot twist. This moment, this word, is the answer to that prayer. You are not just waiting for confirmation, you are the confirmation. You are not just wondering if love is near, you are the reason someone is learning what love even feels like. So don't miss what's being whispered just because it didn't come as a scream. Don't dismiss the subtlety just because it didn't look like a rom-com. Love rarely announces itself with a spotlight. It arrives softly, it arrives sincerely, it arrives scared, and still shows up. So what do you do now? You listen with your spirit, you watch with your heart, You prepare your energy because love like this doesn't require chasing. It invites awareness. If someone is nervous about asking you to be their soulmate, that means they already see you as one, and that means you're not waiting on love. Love is waiting on you to believe that you are already enough. So here's your call to action. Stay open, but stay grounded. Be clear with your energy. Let your presence speak louder than your fear. Don't force it, but don't ignore it. And most of all, remember, you are not hard to love, you are just rare, and someone has been preparing to love you in a way that honors all of you, even if their hands are still shaking. So when love finally walks up to you with nervous eyes and a trembling voice, don't ask, "Why did it take so long?" Just smile and say, "I knew it was you." Because deep down, your soul heard this long before your ears did. This is your sign. This is your confirmation, and this is the beginning